In a land far, far away, there lived a miller with his 3 sons. When the miller died, he left his oldest sons the mill, and to his youngest son, he left his cat. His younger son got really upset. Unlike his brothers, it was almost impossible for him to get by with the will he had got. He looked at the cat and said to himself, "What can you do with a cat? You can't even eat it." But suddenly, something very unexpected happened. The cat answered back.
"You're awfully wrong about me, sir. I can be much more valuable to you than you think."
The young man was stunned to see the cat talking. He asked, stuttering,
How's that possible? If you bring me an empty sack, a hat, and a pair of boots, I will show you how."
With his surprise wearing off, the young man thought to himself, if this cat can talk, he sure might know something.
All right, let's see what you can do.
Young man brought everything the cat had asked for. The cat put the hat on, put his boots on, went to the mirror and looked at himself with pose, then put a bunch of lettuce along with 1 carrot in a sack and took off. When in the wood, he opened the sack and put it on the floor. Not long after, noticing the fresh aroma of the vegetables, a bunny rabbit appeared. In order to eat the lettuce and carrot, the bunny rabbit entered the sack. The cat then quickly ran to the sack, tightly tied it up, and trapped the bunny rabbit in there. Instead of taking the bunny rabbit to its owner, he took it to the castle and told the guards that he'd like to see the king. Seeing a talking cat that's wearing a hat and boots, the guards quickly took him to the king's presence.
Mighty Lord, I present you the gift of the Prince of Cariba. My master, the Prince of Cariba, has caught this bunny rabbit for you just now.
The king was very impressed with this gift. For a very long time, Puss in Boots continued on bringing animals that he caught for the king. And soon after, everybody in the kingdom began to talk about the prince's generosity and wealth. Each passing day, the king's curiosity grew, and so one day he asked Puss in Boots,
"Is your highness young?
Oh, young and very handsome indeed.
Is he rich?"
Very rich, your highness. He would be honored to welcome you in his castle.
At last, the king and queen were very happy to hear that they were going to meet this very handsome prince. "If what Puss in Boots says is true, I think we might have just found the perfect husband for our daughter and a suitable prince for our kingdom," said the queen. A few days later, Puss in Boots found out that the king and queen were out on the town with their daughter.
This is the day I've been waiting for.
He ran straight to his owner.
Sir, we have to go to the riverbank right away. Follow me quickly.
The young man did not understand what was going on, but he did, as he was told.
But why did we come here? To swim, sir.
To swim? But I don't know how to swim.
It's better that you don't. Take off your clothes immediately and get in the river. Trust me, sir, you won't regret it.
Young man did as he was told and went in the river. And Puss in Boots hid his owner's clothes behind the bushes. When the king's carriage was passing next to the river, Puss in Boots ran to them, alarming.
Help! Help! My master, Prince of Cariba, is drowning!
The king immediately sent his men to the river. When his men were saving the young man, Puss in Boots explained to the king how the thieves had stolen his master's clothes. The king ordered the men next to him.
Bring some of the best clothes we have to the prince.
With his new clothes, the young man looked just like a real prince. When he was walking towards the king's carriage, the princess and the queen were watching him. The young man came next to the king and bowed before him.
I can't thank you enough.
My master, the Prince of Cariba, will be honored to host you in his castle, my king. I'll go now and prepare.
Puss in Boots quickly ran off. The young man did not really understand why he was called the Prince of Cariba, but again he thought that Puss in Boots was up to something and kept silent. The princess immediately fell in love with this handsome prince. While running fast to a castle that belonged to a monstrous giant, Puss was yelling to the farmers that worked along the way.
The king is approaching. If he asks, you will say that all this land belongs to the Prince of Cariba, or else he will punish you.
Puss in Boots was running, and at the same time he was repeating the same to everyone he saw along the way. While the king's carriage passed along the way, everyone kept saying the same thing out of fear. The king was surprised that the prince owned such vast amount of land, but he was happy nonetheless. Meanwhile, Puss in Boots arrived to the giant's castle and knocked the door. The door opened with a big noise. When he saw a cat in boots with a hat, the giant was very surprised. When Puss in Boots started to talk, the giant was surprised even more.
Good day, Your Highness.
Who are you and what are you doing in my castle?
Puss in Boots started to implement his plan.
Well, let me put it to you this way, Your Highness. I am the king's loyal servant. The king has told me much about your amazing abilities on magic.
Yes, that is right.
For example, are you able to transform yourself into a huge lion?
Sure I can. This is very easy for me.
Using his amazing magic, the giant transformed into a huge lion. Puss in Boots got very frightened, of course, and jumped as high as he could.
Okay. That's enough.
The giant transformed back to his normal self.
That was amazing. I bet it's impossible for you to transform into any small animal, though. I'm not sure. What do you say?
Impossible? I can transform into any animal I want.
Let me say... Can you transform into a small mouse?
The giant was laughing so loud that Puss was having trouble staying in the same spot. And so the giant used his magical strength and transformed into a mouse. Seeing the giant transformed into a mouse, Puss quickly jumped on the mouse, and with a big bite, he got rid of the giant. Meanwhile, the king's carriage approached the giant's castle, and Puss quickly ran towards the king.
Your Highness, my lord, the Prince of Cariba's castle is at your service. Please come in.
The king, queen, princess, and of course the young man gazed at the castle with admiration. While walking towards the castle, the queen asked the young man, "My dear prince, are you married?"
No, Your Highness. If you would allow me to wed your beautiful daughter, I promise you that I will make her very happy.
A huge feast was prepared at the giant's castle, and the prince and the princess got engaged. Soon after, They got married.
Do you see, sir? I told you how valuable I was going to be.
From that day on, Puss in Boots continued to be the prince's loyal servant. Together, they lived a very rich and healthy life. Once upon a time, there lived a brother and sister named Hansel and Gretel. Their mother had passed away when they were babies. They lived with their dad in a hut in the forest. Their dad was trying to earn their living by working as a woodcutter and was looking after the kids at the same time. A couple of years passed, and struggling to juggle work and 2 kids at the same time, their dad decided to get married again. The woodcutter's wife was from a wealthy family, and she hated the fact that they were poor and she had to live in a small ruined hut deep into the forest. Plus, she did not like her stepchildren at all. On a cold winter night, as they were getting ready for bed, Hansel and Gretel heard their stepmother talking to their dad. "How are you going to get through this winter? We don't have enough food. If you do not get rid of these kids, we will all starve to death." Their dad opposed furiously. "No need to argue. I made up my mind. Tomorrow we'll take them to the woods and leave them there." Hearing all that, Gretel started to cry. Her brother Hansel comforted her.
Please don't worry, Gretel. Somehow we'll find our way back home.
Later that night, Hansel snuck out and collected as many pebbles as he could in his pockets. In the morning, they all started to walk towards the forest. Their father told them that they were going for a family hike. As they were walking, without anyone noticing, Hansel dropped the pebbles to mark the way back. In the afternoon, their dad and stepmother lit a fire and told them that they will be back soon. They walked off and vanished in the woods. Of course, they did not come back. When the night fell, the horrible sounds of all the wild animals in the forest started to echo around them. Shivering with the horrifying sounds of the wolves, Hansel and Gretel did not leave the fireside until the moonrise. Then they started to follow the pebbles shining in the moonlight and walk towards home. "Well done, Hansel. This was very clever of you." When the kids came back home, their dad was very happy and surprised at the same time. Their stepmother also acted as if she was happy, but deep inside, her decision was still the same. She was very upset that they were back. After 3 days, the stepmother tried to get rid of them again. This time at night, she locked Hansel and Gretel's door and did not allow Hansel to collect pebbles again. But Hansel was a clever boy. When they were walking to the forest in the morning, this time he dropped the breadcrumbs that he had put in his pocket the night before and again made a trail the way back home. Around noon, their father and stepmother made up an excuse and went off, leaving them all alone in the forest again. Realizing that they were not coming back, Hansel and Gretel wanted to start walking back home before it got dark. But this time, they could not find the trail they left because all the breadcrumbs were eaten by the birds. Gretel started crying. For the first time, Hansel also felt hopeless. This time the kids were really lost. With no food and scared to death, they wandered around the forest for 3 days. On the 3rd day, they saw a bird, white as snow. The bird chirped songs with its beautiful voice for them. They forgot their hunger for a moment and started to follow the bird. The bird brought them in front of a funny-looking house. This house had walls of bread, a roof made out of cake, and windows of candy, and was covered with colourful cream all around. Hansel and Gretel could not believe their eyes. The house looked incredibly delicious. The kids forgot all about how tired they were and started to run to the house. Just as they were both going to have a bite from the house, they heard a voice from inside. "Oh! Now who is nibbling on my house?" They looked around and they saw a cute and sweet old lady at the door. When they told her all about what had happened to them, she felt very bad for them, and so she let them in. The inside of the house was very different from the outside. It was dark, scary, and it didn't feel right. But because they were so tired and hungry, the kids did not care much. The old lady brought all kinds of food and desserts for them, and the kids ate food that they hadn't had before. That night, they slept on the softest bed they had ever seen. When they woke up in the morning, the old lady wasn't there. They started to look around. At the end of the corridor, they saw a small door. When they opened the door, they found cases full of gold and treasure inside. They were very surprised, of course. Hansel wanted to get in and take a closer look. Right at that moment, they heard her voice again. "And what do you think you are doing?" When they turned around, the kids faced the witch standing right there in front of them. Apparently, the old lady was a witch leading the kids to a dungeon with a house covered with cake and candy. The kids tried to run away, but the door was locked. The witch pulled Hansel by the hair and locked him in a cage. Then she dragged Gretel to the kitchen. "Your brother is too skinny. Cook some food for him and make him fat. When he's in good shape, he'll be a delicious meal for me. But don't you dare eat anything. All the food is only for him." Having no choice, Gretel did what she asked for. Fortunately, Hansel was a clever and wise boy. He decided to trick the evil-hearted witch. Every night when the witch was asleep, he was digging a hole in the ground of the cage. The witch was controlling Hansel every morning to see if he gained weight or not. But Hansel wasn't eating anything his sister cooked. Instead, he was burying them in the hole that he digged. In the meantime, the witch was telling Gretel to cook more. This went on for days until finally the witch had enough. "Fat skinny! I don't care anymore! Today I will make Hansel pie!" She turned to Gretel. "Look in the oven to see if the dough is baked enough." Although she was in fear, Gretel was also a wise girl, just like her brother. She understood that the witch was going to push her in the oven. "I can't get my head in there and see the dough," whined Gretel. The witch pushed her aside and stuck her head inside. Gretel gathered all her strength and pushed the old witch into the oven and closed the oven door. Gretel knew where the witch was hiding the keys. She ran straight away and saved Hansel from the cage. The flames from the oven covered the whole house. Hansel and Gretel ran away from the burning house into the woods. but they did not know where to go. A while later, they came across a river. A giant swan took them one by one to the other side of the river. The kids looked around and suddenly they realized where they were. They ran home as fast as they could. Seeing his kids, Father was full of joy. With tears of joy, he explained to them how their stepmother had gone back to her parents' house soon after they had left them in the forest, and how sorry he was for all that he did, and no matter how hard he had searched for them, they were nowhere to be found. The kids loved their father very much, so they forgave him. But another surprise was waiting for their father. They both reached their pockets and brought out gold and diamonds they had found in the witch's home. Their father could not believe his eyes. All the problems that their family had ever had went away, and they lived happily ever after.